This is a Fox News alert. We have breaking news on a possible last-minute deal on the short-term fate, at least, of the law that allows the government to collect information about your private phone calls. A last-minute effort to try to get a reauthorization of the Patriot Act through the Senate. Chief Congressional Correspondent Mike Emanuel is on the Hill tonight, keeping his eyes on this constant battle between privacy and national security we've seen play out over the past day. Hi, Mike.
Hi, Brett. We expect a variety of votes in the Senate tomorrow, one on a House-passed bill, one on an extension, a 2-month extension of current law. And Senate Intelligence Chairman Richard Burr says he's working on a last-minute, emergency, last-ditch effort to preserve some of these protections. Pressure up here is building.
I think we can be safe and have our freedom as well. I think we can obey the Constitution and catch terrorists at the same time.
Kentucky's Rand Paul spent more than 10 hours on the Senate floor blasting the NSA's bulk collection of American phone records. That's the most controversial component of 3 Patriot Act provisions set to expire at the end of the month, which experts say provide critical tools for tracking terrorists. Some on the left are with Paul.
What doesn't make sense is to be pursuing approaches that don't make us safer and compromise our liberties.
Yet time is running short.
This is an issue that has a fuse attached to it. This is an issue that is going to result in an expiration of the existing statute at the end of the month.
A Justice Department memo sent to Capitol Hill obtained by Fox warns Congress must pass something by tomorrow night. If not, the memo warns, quote, the National Security Agency will need to begin taking steps to wind down the bulk telephone metadata program in anticipation of a possible sunset in order to ensure that it does not engage in any unauthorized collection or use of the metadata. Lee says the Senate should just approve the House's USA Freedom Act, which passed 338 to 88 last week.
This will not only allow us to keep the government safe, it'll actually, I think, be more effective than the system in place right now under the Patriot Act.
Yet other Republican senators say the House measure is too weak and worry phone companies will not want to store phone records as long as the government would like. If the Senate cannot pass the House measure, it would move to a 60-day extension. Speaker John Boehner isn't showing his next move.
The House has acted. It's time for the Senate to act. If they act, we'll certainly look at what they do and make a decision about how to proceed.
The White House is trying to convince senators to back the House plan, but it doesn't sound like it has the votes. The thinking on a 2-month extension is it would give time to correct weaknesses in the House bill. And as I mentioned at the top, Senator Richard Burr, the Intel chairman, says if all else fails, he wants to have a 3rd emergency backup plan. Brett?
Mike Emanuel live on the Hill. Mike, thank you. More on this with the panel, Judge Napolitano and Charles Krauthammer. Should be interesting. Rand Paul is not the only Republican presidential candidate or prospective candidate with serious questions about government surveillance or collection of data. Several other hopefuls remain supportive of reauthorizing the Patriot Act. Chief Political Correspondent Carl Cameron has that story tonight.
I will not let the Patriot Act, the most unpatriotic of acts, go unchallenged.
Of the Senate's 3 other GOP White House hopefuls, Ted Cruz of Texas stands with Rand Paul against the surveillance as a warrantless violation of constitutionally protected privacy, while Florida Senator Marco Rubio and South Carolina Senator Lindsey Graham say it's a necessary and constitutional weapon in the war on terror. In New Hampshire, former Florida Governor Jeb Bush dug in with supporters.
Over and over again, when people make these assertions that somehow people that you're getting spied on by Washington, D.C. because of the Patriot Act, there's not a single shred of evidence of that.
Republicans are divided over government surveillance programs. Former Arkansas Governor Mike Huckabee gave a nod to Paul's concerns.
Put me down as somebody who thinks it needs to be revised, not just immediately restored, because I think that the senator has made some valid points. The biggest question is this: does the Constitution allow the government to read the mail and to listen to the phone calls, even to collect them without a warrant or probable cause? And I think the obvious answer is no, it does not.
A proponent and participant in Iowa's traditional presidential straw poll in recent years, Huckabee's joining Bush and Graham in skipping the event this August as a waste of time and money that can wound or weaken candidates. Cruz tangled with a reporter this week, all but accusing the media of trying to weaken and wound the right by painting it as homophobic.
Do you have a personal animosity against gay Americans?
But let me ask a question. Is there something about the left, and I'm going to put the media in this category, that's obsessed with sex? Why is it that the only question you want to ask concerns homosexuals? The Constitution gives marriage to elected state legislatures. It doesn't give the power of marriage to a president or to an unelected judges to tear down the decisions enacted by democratically elected state legislatures.
That video went viral on the right. In anticipation of the Supreme Court ruling on gay marriage later this year, a lot of the Republican candidates have been essentially taking the position that, like Cruz, the 10th Amendment leaves such decisions to each state, not the federal government. Brett.
All right, Carl, thank you. As ISIS terrorists take control of a famed archaeological site in Syria, President Obama is expanding U.S. involvement against the rampaging ISIS army in Iraq, greenlighting the quick delivery of a shipment of shoulder-fired rockets. This comes just days after the terrorists overran the strategic city of Ramadi in the country's largest Sunni province. Correspondent Kevin Corke looks at the president's policy tonight from the White House.
Critical. On a day when President Obama welcomed Tunisia's president and designated his country a major non-NATO ally for its democratic reforms in the aftermath of the 2011 Arab Spring uprising, the White House made good on a promise following the rout at Ramadi. The president authorized sending 2,000 anti-tank rockets to help combat the massive suicide vehicle bombs that ISIS used in capturing the Anbar provincial capital. Blasts so powerful, some were described as being on par with the Oklahoma City bombing. White House officials say the rocket shipment is not a new strategy, but consistent with its 36-month goal to degrade the enemy. Defeat will take longer. In an interview with The Atlantic, the president said despite recent headlines, things are not dire in Iraq, saying, quote, "No, I don't think we're losing, and I just talked to our CENTCOM commanders and the folks on the ground. There's no doubt there was a tactical setback, although Ramadi had been vulnerable for a very long time, primarily because these are not Iraqi security forces that we have trained or reinforced." The Obama doctrine is predicated on building up the capacity of local fighters with broad training, additional equipment, operational advice, and, when possible, close air support. But the effectiveness of that strategy is debatable. ISIS-controlled areas have continued to spread throughout Syria and Iraq on the president's watch. This as ISIS overtook the ancient Syrian city of Palmyra, threatening to destroy antiquities there, as they did in Mosul. Critics argue the mission to degrade and not defeat is tantamount to leading from behind.
To win this fight, the president is going to have to scrap his policies that aren't working, lay out a broad, overarching strategy to defeat these savage terrorists.
I'm not really sure what they're advocating. We hear them complain about the pace of progress. There's no doubt the president would like to see more progress too, but he understands that the kind of strategy that we're currently pursuing is entirely consistent with our national security interests.
As you heard there, Brett, again, the goal for this administration, for the balance of the Obama administration, is to degrade the enemy because they believe defeat will simply take much longer than that. I should also point out those rockets that you heard about in the piece, well, they're likely to move to Iraq pretty quickly. In fact, by perhaps as late as the end of the coming week, they should be there. And I should also add one more nugget. We heard from a senior military official tonight who said that the real question is, what are the Iraqis going to do differently?
Kevin Corke live in the North Lawn. Kevin, thank you. We are learning more tonight about what Hillary Clinton was told immediately after the Benghazi terror attacks, including information that flies in the face of the administration's official story. And it came from a source who was off the books, not in the administration. Chief White House correspondent Ed Henry has the latest fallout from the Clinton email drama.
Explosive new details emerged today from emails about Benghazi sent and received on Hillary Clinton's personal account, as Republicans charged what's holding up their Select Committee investigation of the terror attacks is the State Department sitting on some of the 55,000 pages of her official email.
Our request to them is to listen, to give us the documents and let us finish this report.
We will be releasing very, very soon. The first set we said we would release.
Some of those emails published in the New York Times and confirmed by congressional sources show Clinton advisor Sidney Blumenthal sent her a memo the day after the Benghazi attacks, suggesting they grew out of demonstrations over an internet video. Yet the next day, September 13th, 2012, Blumenthal sent Clinton a more thorough memo with new details details she forwarded to a top official. The attacks were sparked by a Libyan terror group with ties to al-Qaeda. Yet the very next day, September 14th, Clinton joined President Obama at Andrews Air Force Base to meet the coffins of the 4 Americans killed in the attacks and picked one of the conflicting narratives.
We've seen rage and violence directed at American embassies over an awful internet video that we had nothing to do with.
Republican Chairman Trey Gowdy has now subpoenaed Blumenthal to find out how he got his information and what else he shared with Clinton, who this week laughed off a question about her email contact with Blumenthal.
So long. I have many old friends.
The emails do seem to support Clinton's contention back in March that she did not email classified information, except the emails passed through her personal server did contain sensitive information, including the whereabouts of Ambassador Christopher Stevens in the months before Benghazi. Significant since former CIA official Mike Morrell said he believes hypothetically that Clinton's email was compromised.
I think that foreign intelligence services, the good ones, have everything on any unclassified network that the government uses, whether it's a private server or a public one.
Now remember, those 55,000 pages of email include a lot more in Russia, Iran. Were foreign governments hacking into her personal server and reading those emails? Questions for Clinton, who, by the way, will deliver a big speech June 13th to officially launch her campaign, even though it's already been in the works here for a few weeks.
You can try for more questions.
Yeah, we'll try again.
Ed, thanks.
Good to see you.
Up next, new information on a possible link between a victim and the suspect in the brutal murder of a Washington, D.C. family as a manhunt is now underway. First, here's what some of our Fox affiliates around the country are covering tonight. Fox 42 in Omaha, where flags are lowered to half-staff in honor of Officer Kerry Orozco, who was killed yesterday. It happened as gunfire erupted while officers were trying to serve a felony arrest warrant on 26-year-old Marcus Wheeler. He was also killed. Orozco gave birth in February and was about to take maternity leave. Fox 5 in Atlanta, where the president of the Boy Scouts of America says the organization's long-standing ban on participation by openly gay adults is not sustainable. Former Defense Secretary Robert Gates, now the head of the Scouts, is calling for a policy change to avoid potentially destructive legal battles. And this is a live look at Los Angeles from our affiliate, Fox 11. The big story there tonight, the cleanup continues from Tuesday's oil spill near Santa Barbara. Officials say up to 105,000 gallons escaped from the broken pipeline, and as much as 21,000 gallons of oil reached the sea. That's tonight's live look outside the Beltway from Special Report.